1 hour ago. Breaking news sent shockwaves through Westminster tonight as King Charles took a step no monarch has taken in centuries, pushing the Prime Minister's government to the edge of a full political crisis. Inside Buckingham Palace, events unfolded that will be studied in constitutional law for generations, revealing a moment so serious that much of the mainstream media is already trying to soften, frame, and manage the story. But here is the clear, unfiltered account of what happened and why it could reshape British politics. At exactly 2:15 this afternoon, Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived at Buckingham Palace carrying the Digital Identity and Migration Control Bill. The visit was expected to be routine. 20 minutes, a formal audience, and royal approval granted as usual. He was joined by his closest advisors, including Chief of Staff Sue Gray, Communications Director Matthew Doyle, and Attorney General Victoria Atkins. They expected a formality. Instead, they walked into what palace insiders are now calling a constitutional earthquake. According to 3 palace sources who were present, King Charles refused to sign the bill. There was no pause, no request for changes, and no delay. The refusal was immediate and final. The king is said to have looked the Prime Minister directly in the eye and delivered 6 words already being described as historic. "I cannot, in good conscience, approve this." The room fell silent. Witnesses say the Prime Minister's face flushed as the weight of the moment became clear. What followed shocked even long-serving palace staff. The Prime Minister allegedly leaned forward and issued what one court official later described as an unprecedented and deeply inappropriate warning, stating that the monarch was a ceremonial figure, not a political actor, and suggesting Parliament would respond firmly if boundaries were crossed. Sue Gray is said to have audibly gasped. Victoria Atkins reportedly turned pale, and even Matthew Doyle, known for his hard-edged political style, appeared visibly unsettled. King Charles did not raise his voice or move from his seat. With his hands calmly resting on the desk, he responded carefully and precisely. He told the Prime Minister that he had read every line of the bill and had consulted constitutional scholars, former judges, and civil liberties experts. His decision, he said, was final. Then came an extraordinary moment. The king slid a 40-page legal opinion across the desk, written by Lord Sumption, one of the country's most respected former Supreme Court justices. According to palace sources, the document methodically challenges the bill's legal basis and raises serious constitutional concerns. The Prime Minister reportedly did not read it. He gathered his briefcase, did not make the customary bow, and left Buckingham Palace abruptly. Shortly afterwards, leaked security footage appeared to show the Prime Minister walking quickly toward his car, his frustration clearly visible. But this crisis goes far beyond a dramatic clash between Crown and government. As ministers attempt to push through wide-reaching surveillance legislation with an estimated cost of £3.7 billion, critics are asking hard questions about priorities. They point to strained public services and the treatment of veterans. One case has drawn particular attention. James Richardson, a 71-year-old former Royal Marine who served in the Falklands, reportedly waited 9 months for a hip replacement. His daughter shared his story online, saying her father gave everything for his country and can no longer walk to his own letterbox. The post has now been shared tens of thousands of times, resonating with millions of Britons across the country. The bill the Prime Minister attempted to push through would have introduced digital identity cards tied directly to immigration status, combining facial recognition, biometric tracking, and large centralized databases. Technology contracts connected to the scheme are reported to total £1.9 billion, awarded without open competition to companies alleged to have links to Labour donors. 3 of the 5 firms expected to benefit are said to have senior executives who contributed financially to the Prime Minister's leadership campaign. Margaret Ellis, a retired postal worker from Yorkshire and a lifelong Labour voter, captured the public mood when she said that when the king shows more compassion for ordinary people than the Prime Minister, something has gone seriously wrong. Even trade union leaders are beginning to break ranks. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham publicly questioned why billions are being directed towards surveillance technology, while hospitals are crumbling and veterans are struggling to receive basic care. Then, less than 90 minutes after the Prime Minister left the palace, Buckingham Palace took an extraordinary step. At 3:47 p.m., it released a formal statement written in the King's own hand, citing constitutional precedent stretching back to the reign of Queen Anne. The statement explained that royal approval has historically been withheld when legislation threatens the balance between Parliament, the people, and the Crown. It warned that the bill would grant the executive sweeping surveillance powers without adequate judicial oversight. The king concluded that he could not, in good conscience, grant approval to the bill in its current form. Professor David Blackwell of Cambridge University described the move as the most significant use of monarchical authority since 1936. Palace insiders say the king spent 3 consecutive evenings studying the European Convention on Human Rights and consulting constitutional experts from Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. All reportedly warned that the legislation crossed dangerous constitutional boundaries. Public reaction was immediate and dramatic. A Snap YouGov poll conducted between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. showed 68% of Britons supporting the king's decision, rising to 79% among voters over the age of 50. Even 62% of Labour voters were said to back the monarch. The Prime Minister's approval rating reportedly dropped by 10 points in a single afternoon, falling to just 19% among key Red Wall voters. Within hours, spontaneous demonstrations appeared across the country. Thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace by early evening, while crowds filled streets in Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, and Glasgow. Union flags were waved as people of all ages chanted, "God save the King." One widely shared video showed a 92-year-old woman in a wheelchair in Leeds, visibly emotional, holding a handwritten sign thanking the king for remembering ordinary people. The clip reached nearly 2 million views in just 2 hours. Across social media, support took creative and unexpected forms. A fish and chip shop in Hull offered free chips to those backing the king. A pub in Cornwall renamed its best-selling ale Constitutional Courage. Football fans at a Newcastle match broke into a spontaneous rendition of God Save the King at halftime. Observers have noted that these were not organized demonstrations, but organic expressions of support from working-class communities traditionally aligned with Labour. Aga tumhain koibatsam jani Hawaii kisi hisamain adjustment chehiho, Tamuj Roman Urdu mine batadina. Inside number 10. Sources describe scenes of total chaos. The Home Secretary is said to have hurled a binder across the room during an emergency cabinet meeting. The Deputy Prime Minister was reportedly overheard saying that the Prime Minister was finished and that the party needed to move fast. Resignations began shortly after 7:20 p.m. when the Chief Secretary to the Treasury stepped down and published his resignation letter online before it even reached Downing Street. In it, he wrote that he could not continue to serve a Prime Minister who had so badly misunderstood the British constitutional system. Several junior ministers followed within the hour. But the most damaging development may prove fatal to the Prime Minister's leadership. Leaked cabinet documents reportedly show that he expected this confrontation and pursued it on purpose. Minutes from a meeting held 2 weeks ago allegedly quote him as saying that a refusal by the king would create the constitutional crisis needed to reshape the monarchy for the modern age. One Labour backbencher described the documents as political suicide written in black and white as the Prime Minister now fights for survival. Nigel Farage appears to be benefiting significantly from the turmoil. Speaking to reporters this evening, Farage said the king had reminded the nation why Britain kept its monarchy while other countries abandoned theirs, and that some principles matter more than short-term political gain. Reform UK's membership system reportedly crashed under a surge of new sign-ups, with more than 12,000 people joining in less than an hour. The party is said to have raised £1.3 million in just 3 hours, more than it raised during the entire month of November. Polling now suggests a dramatic shift in the political landscape. Labour is falling sharply, Reform UK is surging, and the Conservatives are holding a narrow lead. For the first time, Farage's party is being discussed as a serious contender for government. Major Labour donors are reportedly defecting, with one former supporter saying he had funded a moderate who promised stability, but instead supported a radical who chose to pick a fight with the king. The next 72 hours could determine Britain's political future. Parliament reconvenes tomorrow for an emergency session, while the 1922 committee is meeting to discuss a possible motion of no confidence. Labour's National Executive Committee has scheduled a crisis meeting to consider leadership challenge procedures, and trade unions are debating whether to continue funding a party that many believe has lost touch with its core supporters. International reaction has been swift. U.S. officials are said to be privately describing the situation as a disaster for transatlantic relations, while European leaders have openly praised constitutional monarchy as a stabilizing force. At the center of it all stands King Charles, aged 75, a man who spent his life preparing for a largely ceremonial role, and now finds himself cast as a defender of constitutional balance. Palace sources say he is firm, deeply saddened that events reached this point, but convinced he had no other choice. He is reported to have said that signing the bill would have betrayed his coronation.